I want to hear a little from you. Can you walk us through how you made the decision to focus on email marketing more specifically, and maybe even what immediate changes you saw in your business because of relying more on email marketing than on social media?
This is a great question, and I'll just kind of take you back years ago. You know, we're all like pressed for time. There's only so much time in a day, and as I was kind of analyzing my time and the ROI I was getting on it, what I realized was all the time that I was spending or trying to spend on social media to get people, either back to my email list or, getting clients from that or selling my digital products from that, it just wasn't working. It really wasn't giving me the ROI on my time. So I was like, you know what? That's not working. I'm not going to do that anymore. So I'm going to really focus on email marketing. And that's when I saw a change. And then we can dig into kind of all the changes I've made over the years and some of the challenges, quite frankly, that I've even had with email marketing. But it really just came down to it. I didn't have a lot of time. I'm a busy mom, like probably everybody else kind of listening here. And I only had so much time to spend on my business. So I really had to analyze and dig in where was I going to get the most ROI for that?
That makes a lot of sense. So now that you focus on email marketing more than social media, I'd love to hear, what is your business relationship with social media now? Do you use it? How do you use it?
Mhm. Great question, because I do have several different brands and businesses that I own and manage. And one of them is Hobby School. And in Hobby School, we do have a fairly large Facebook group there that we use for our events because we run online learning summits throughout the year. So we do use that. So we are paying attention to that. And we do have like a Facebook page and an Instagram account for that. The main reason why we do still post on social media and Hobby School is that is a brand that I am planning to sell, Lord willing. I'm planning to sell in like two years. And I know that the buyer for that brand is going to want a social media presence. We don't do a lot on social media. It's mostly there just to have a presence there so that when the buyer comes, that he or she sees that we have a presence on social media and, obviously they like that. So that's really the main reason why we're doing that for Hobby School. Now for my personal brand, I put up a 9 grid on Instagram. And because, basically not really doing anything there. I don't use TikTok. I do use Pinterest, but I don't really consider Pinterest necessarily a social media. I consider that more of a SEO search engine, search and discovery type platform. But if people are interested in Pinterest, to me that's a separate conversation. Now, one of the areas that I may kind of dip my toes in a little bit this upcoming year is LinkedIn, because I do have some offers in my personal brand, one of them in particular, which is my newsletter Profit Club, that I know that people on LinkedIn are definitely going to be interested in. Now, I haven't really done that much there, but that is on kind of my future plans, if you would, for that brand.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And what I heard in what you were saying is that you're very purposeful with where you are and why you're there. So that way you can have the ROTI, the return on time invested, right? And so that, I think, is a huge mindset shift that we need to have as entrepreneurs as we delve into the online space. So I know that we're going to talk email newsletters, but obviously, we need to have a way for people to get on our email newsletters. So I just love to hear, what are your favorite ways outside of social media to bring people in? We don't have to talk, strategy of them, but I just want to hear that.
There's so many, but the thing is, there's so many ways, and I
So
really
many.
haven't used social media to get people on my email list. So this is a perfect kind of topic here. So definitely collaborations. I think that all of us would agree that collaborations are key there, and there's tons of ways you can do that. Like we have the newsletter Profit Club collaboration app where people can go in and enter their newsletter information, find other people to collaborate with, and do like freebie swaps with. You can do summits, bundles. You can just like go find one of your peers and say, do you want to do a freebie swap? I did one of those this past week. So those are some of my favorite ways. You can also do paid advertising. So one of the things that some people do and pay to actually get on my email list, right? They'll pay, do like a sponsored post, go sign up for this. I did that. Like I've done several of those already as we're recording this and it's 2025. We've only been here, a month or so. I've already done several of those this year myself. So free stuff, paid stuff, honestly, it all works.
Yeah, love it. So tell me a little bit about what mistakes you see entrepreneurs making with their newsletters. Do you see like a rolling theme at all?
Well, we could really go on and on all day about this, but and I've made these mistakes also myself. So I'm not really pointing fingers at anybody, but one of the things that I see a lot of people making is giving away free gift after free gift after free gift in their newsletter. And my philosophy is, and I'm not saying you should never do this or you should never provide value in your newsletter. I am not saying that at all. But when you're giving away stuff, every single week and you train your audience basically that your newsletter is basically a freebie fest, that's going to put them in the frame of mind so that when you're ready to sell, they're like, well, why isn't this free? Why is she charging for this? Some of the things I have, and I've done a lot of newsletter audits over the past year, and I've seen people like having the banner at the top of their email list, free resources or free gifts. So, what happens when you do that in your newsletter? Basically, people are going to see that at the top. They're going, oh, I want to go get that. They're going to click on that, go to your website, your landing page, or wherever you have put those free gifts, and they're going to go grab whatever that is, and they're never going to come back to your newsletter because something's going to happen, right? They're busy. The dog's going to start barking. The UPS guy's going to show up, or the dinner's on the stove, or their kids are tugging at their legs, or so they're just never going to get back to the important content in your newsletter. So that is one of the big mistakes I see actually a lot of very seasoned business owners making.
It makes a lot of sense because we're essentially training them with what we want or what we expect of them. And if all we train them on is free stuff, they're never going to be like nurtured to buy.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you flip the script on traditional newsletter thinking? So, maybe we start with what is traditional newsletter thinking? Like, what are most people doing? But then, how did you change your mindset on it?
Yeah. So basically, what was happening is kind of, I wasn't seeing results in my email marketing, right? So, you know, sending out offers, not making as many sales as I thought I would make. And I really, quite frankly, was following all of what I would call kind of the traditional advice that is out there in this, online business world, creator market, if you would. And that was, send out your main piece of content. For me, that was a podcast episode, right? So send out your main piece of content to your audience, giving them a ton of value. And when you're ready to launch or whatever, they will be warm and nurtured, right, and ready to buy from you. Well, what was happening, and I saw this in my own behavior, so it's very normal out there, and I do this. I was doing this too for people that I really loved and respected and really liked. I was seeing their weekly email coming up, and I knew it was their latest podcast episode. I'm like, well, I'll go listen to that if I want to when I'm in my car taking my kids to school or working out or whatever. I don't need to open up this email. And that's what was happening. And I'm like, okay, so something clicked in me. And I kind of put my marketing college professor on because I do still teach at the graduate level, teach marketing courses there. And I'm like, I'm going to go do a research study. So I conducted a 6-month research study and really looked at all of these, what I would call these really newsletter type businesses, people who had set up email newsletter and that was their main product, like the morning brew, the hustle, those type of big type newsletter businesses. And I'm like, what are they doing differently? Because a lot of these have sold these newsletter businesses for millions of dollars. And I'm like, that just seemed crazy to me. It's just a newsletter. It's just an email platform. And they're, selling these businesses. I'm like, they've got to be doing something differently. So I kind of dug into that and did that 6 month study. And I came away with a lot of ahas. It really just everything changed, quite frankly, about how I viewed and approached email marketing. And one of them was what I designed is called my mini magazine method. And it really kind of goes back to when you think about, and I'm kind of dating myself a little bit here, but when I was like in high school and the Cosmo would come in your mailbox, you like run out there and you would like open it up and, go to this section or go to this section or go to this section. You like looked forward to it. And I was like, you know what? That's what these newsletter operators are doing in these newsletters. They're kind of recreating these old timey type newsletters. And that's really, what changed. And that's kind of really just changed everything for me.
Yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
And the idea of having a newsletter that you can sell, like a brand that you can sell because of people engaging and wanting what's inside. I think that's really, really intriguing. So I know you've mentioned making money every time that you hit send on an email. So and you have this method of like kind of a magazine style. Can you walk me through a little bit like an example of what one might look like?
So there's a lot of different ways that you can monetize your newsletter. And some of these I do, every week. Some of them I kind of pick and choose. It kind of really just depends on what my promotional strategy is or what I'm promoting for that week. So some options are, and I've done all of these recently, like in the past few weeks, I've had like a sponsored post. So somebody has actually paid me to to put their free gift or whatever, like Get Response. We did that for it was like a side hustle kit. We did that for our hobby school brand here recently. So they actually paid me to send that out, and they will pay really, really good money to get in front of your audience. So if people are out there saying, I didn't even know you could do that, well, I didn't either. And when I found out how to do it and where to find people that could find me to pay me to do it, it really did change things. So that's one thing. Now, a lot of us are familiar with affiliate marketing. So that's another way. If you have like a section in your newsletter, maybe I'm going to make something up, maybe it's like tool of the week or something. You could have a teaching section in there that kind of teaches them a little bit about how you're using that tool, obviously, and have that in there. So it's just one section in your newsletter, something short, sweet, but you're really making it valuable and also promoting that particular offer to them. Now, one of my favorite ways, right, to make money every time I send out would just be my own like digital products or services or whatever I'm promoting there. And I almost do that every single week, So that's something I would put in there, but I'm very strategic about how I do that. So, like for instance, in my Creators MBA newsletter, I have a section that's called Bookmark Worthy. And in that section, that's like kind of the meat of that newsletter. And I want to make sure that people walk away after they read that. They're like, that was worth me opening up that newsletter. So it's something truly super valuable, and that I've, covered in there. And I might have a little promotion like, if you want to know more, you can do this type thing.
I love those ideas. And even just the sponsorship idea, that's actually newer to me, like a newer concept. I've done a lot of lead magnet swaps, which is great, freebie swaps.
Mhm.
But the idea of starting with a sponsorship, somebody wanting to pay me to be in my newsletter is a pretty cool thing. Like, I want to kind of jump, I know other people are like, how do you do that? So, can
Yeah.
you break down just what that looks like and maybe
Yeah.
how you can pitch it or how do you find sponsors?
So I'll just throw out a number. In January, I made $3,000 by doing just that. And it was really just putting a section in my newsletter that was, either a lead magnet or something that they were wanting to promote. Maybe it was a webinar or something. So between both of the newsletters I made $3,000. So you definitely can do it. Now, how do they find you? I'll just walk you through how some of these people found me. One was through the ad creator network for ConvertKit. So Kit, they're Kit now. They reached out to me saying, and this was actually for my hobby school newsletter. They said Tim Ferriss wants to sponsor your newsletter. Here's what you're going to do, and they gave me everything. So I just had to put the snippet in the newsletter. So that was one. Another person reached out of the blue. So I don't know, I actually don't know where they found me, and they wanted me to promote a webinar for them. That was for the selfpublishing.com. So that was, and we kind of went back and forth, came up to an agreement, and I said, I will, do it for X amount. So we did that. Passionfruit.me is passion, FROOT.me. And you can put that in the show notes if you want. I actually have my newsletters there, and I do get a lot of people that are reaching out to me wanting to do like sponsorships there. So that's another place that they found me. And I think two of the sponsors that paid me in January found me through Passion Fruit.
Okay. Very good. Do you have a little note in your newsletter, like where the sponsorship is about becoming a sponsor or anything like that?
I don't. It's something I certainly can do. Sometimes like in our hobby school brand, we'll send out emails to some of our past speakers and our affiliates saying, here are some ways that you can either collaborate with us or get your name out if you would. And so we'll do that. Sometimes we'll put in blurbs if you want to like collaborate or sponsor, here's the options there, but I don't normally include that as a normal kind of section, if you would, in my newsletter.
Okay. Very good. So I know you've built multiple six-figure brands primarily through email, which is amazing. So I'd love to hear, do you have any other secrets or tips to keeping subscribers engaged and eager to open up your emails? Because there is so much competition out there. And so everyone gets so many emails every day. How do you get them to click on yours?
So the first thing that you would need to kind of build up is your reputation, because your name is like that's really why or why not they're going to open it. So that's going to be the first thing. So that goes back to kind of creating that valuable content that I referred to earlier. So you really want to make sure that you are, teaching directly in there. You're providing that. You're not sending, and I'm not saying that I don't include links to my podcast episodes, because I certainly do, but you're not always, that's just not the complete topic, right? In your newsletter, you have other things in your newsletter that's valuable for them. So you want them, when they see your name in that inbox, you want them to say, okay, this is worth my attention. And then, of course, subject lines are always very important, because that kind of gives them a little sneak peek in terms of what's in your newsletter. Always make, you know, uh, that preview text, make sure you're always using that. Another mistake, actually, I probably should bring up that I see a lot of people making for the newsletter is they'll put like the newsletter name in the subject line. That's valuable real estate. You don't want to do that. So if you're doing that, that's something you'll definitely want to change. And then, it just goes back to that valuable content. You want them to be basically save your emails in a special Gmail folder. And that's kind of what I teach, and what people, when I actually made the change in my email newsletter, the how I knew that I had really kind of hit the nail on the head, if you would, is I had people emailing me back saying, Destiny, your emails are so good. I like save them all in a special folder in my email system. And I'm like, okay, so now I know that's working.
I love that. Have a little
Mhm.
destiny folder.
Yeah,
I need a Gabe folder. So
there
once I
you
hear that, yeah,
go.
that's really interesting. About I was going to ask you about the subject line, because I have seen some people like say it's kind of their curated newsletter, so it always has their newsletter name. But I feel like that might become more people get kind of a little numb to that at some
Mhm.
point, and maybe that's the reason that it is a mistake. Or what is the kind of the thought process behind that?
Yeah, so they know that it's your newsletter, right? Because they see your name. So you don't have to
Mm,
tell them that. The only time I actually do that is when I'm sending out a member email. So like for my digital product growth lab or my part-time passion club and hobby school, like I want them to know that that's a member email. So I want them to know that that's different, that they really, really, need to open it, that it contains important information about their program. But that's the only time I ever include something like that in the subject line.
okay. Yeah. I do the same thing for students because I just want them to know
Mhm.
that it's the openness because it's important for your membership or the course that you're working on or whatever it is. So very good. Now let's talk about measuring success. How can we measure success with our newsletter? Is it just open rates? Are there other things to think about? I think what you even just mentioned, somebody replying and saying, I have a folder for your newsletters because they're so good. What are some indicators?
Well, certainly replies. I mean, when people are kind of having that conversation with you, I think that's very important. Open rates, there's, sometimes they're just hard to measure, right? We don't really know if that open rate is really giving us a right open rate. Clicks are important because, like going back to the sponsors that we talked about before, they're going to want to know how many clicks you're going to be able to send over to them. That's going to be basically how you can measure how much you can charge. So that's one of the most important things. But just like the clicks, the replies and how much you're making, right? I mean, you want to know how much you're making. Like whenever I send out an email, I'm like, okay, I think I might be able to make, whatever, $1,000 from this email. That's important to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And success is so measured different ways than just the numbers.
Mhm.
So, and yeah, like sales coming through. Whoa, I got a
Yeah.
sale. That came from that email because I know I promoted it, right? Like
Yeah.
just all the different things that can come from it and the impact and the ripple effect you can have just with your newsletter, which is really cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about transitioning to an email first business model. So, for those who are feeling overwhelmed by social media or whatever marketing strategies they're doing, what would be your first steps or your first tips to give to someone who is like, I want to transition to this? What Destiny's talking about, email first business model.
Yeah, so the really the first thing is to grow your email list with your ideal customer. And I think that one of the fastest ways to do that and easiest ways would be just to go with somebody that has your ideal customer on their email list and just maybe do a collab with them. That's really one of the easiest ways to get started. Obviously, you can do like the summit speaking, the bundle collabs, and those are also good ways to get started too, but that's what I would do is just focus on growing my email list. And then from there, I just want you to be very strategic about your email marketing, right? Think about what what the purpose is of each email, what you're trying to promote in that email, how you can do that mix of promotion and value, because you always want to make sure you're providing that value too in your email newsletters. And I do want to make a distinction here because I think this is important. We are specifically talking about your weekly newsletter or however, however much you're
However
sending it
often.
out. Yeah, however often I should say. I'm not talking about a promotion that you're doing to launch an offer. Like what I'm doing right now in Hobby School, I'm in the middle of launching our part time passion club. So those emails I'm sending out, those are not my newsletters. Those are very, very sales focused, right? With the bonuses and the urgency and all that. I'm not talking about what we're talking about here today is your email newsletters.
Yeah, that's a good distinction to have because there are different purposes for specific promotions and how often you're sending and what's inside it, right?
Yeah.
So I did remember what I was going to ask, and it had to do with the free content we create. So if we have a podcast or a YouTube channel or a blog, how are you incorporating that into your magazine newsletter style so that it's still in there and can give the value, but it's not the main part of the email?
Yeah, so great question. So I have a section like in my Creators MBA newsletter that's for the podcast. But I know and I realize based on human behavior that they're not necessarily going to go from there and just go directly and listen to that podcast. It's more just kind of planting the seed, saying, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. I want to make sure that I go listen to that when I'm walking my dog or whatever. And actually, I'm trying to think, it was HubSpot, I think, when I was kind of doing some of this research, they actually stopped including links from their newsletter to their YouTube channel because it was messing up the algorithm to their YouTube channel. And let me explain why that was happening because I think this is important. Basically, when you think about behavior of somebody when they're reading or kind of where their mindset is when they're reading an email, they're not necessarily in the mindset to go watch a 30-minute YouTube video, right? So basically, what was happening is when they were sending traffic from their newsletter to YouTube, and people were going there and they were just bouncing off, right? Because they weren't ready. They weren't in that mindset to watch that video. When they stopped doing that, and then let that new video and let the YouTube algorithm kind of do its thing, it helped build their channel. And not saying that they wouldn't go back to that video like 2 weeks later or a week later and point people to it after it had kind of build up, the algorithm had done its work. They would definitely do that. But that's just something I wanted to point out. And I don't have a YouTube channel, but I've worked with some of my clients on this, and it actually, helped their channel also.
Ooh, that's a good tip right there.
Mhm.
So, very good. Let's make this really practical. What's one simple change that listeners could take today to improve their newsletter's performance? If they could only just do one thing today, what would it be?
If they could only do one thing, and I'm going to make the assumption that they're sending out their weekly newsletter or their newsletter on a regular basis. Now, I think that weekly is kind of ideal if you're, not doing it on a weekly basis. To me, that's kind of the minimum for most of us, for most newsletters out there, because you want to stay top of mind. So let's assume that everybody's already doing that. Then the next thing I would do is map out your promotional schedule. So map it out for the next 3 months, and you're going to use that as the basis for your email content. So whatever you're trying to promote that particular week, your newsletter content needs to be able to weave all of that in kind of naturally in a non-salesy type of way. And that's going to help you kind of promote those offers.
I love it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This has been just full of gold.
Thanks so much for having me.